So we're up to about page Dalet. So we spoke about the idea of the shemus, that the name is what connects the neshama with the body. That's what the last thing that we said. The line over here, and Yin Hashem is kashrus and neshama maguf. That's what the name is, the connection between the neshama and the guf. We can understand that also relating to what's above. The name of Hashem. So just like by name of people, the name is the what connects the body and the neshama. So something l'mayla. Shalem ne'malif ni'maisa yani nikra. We said we brought earlier medrash that says the way according to my actions. That's why I'm called. And that's so. Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, "What's your name?" And Hashem said, "I don't have a name specifically. According to ni'maisa yani nikra, depending on what I do, I am called." So what is the shame? The connection between the ani, which is the essence of Hashem, together with the action, the revelation. How Hashem behaves, that's according to what he has to do. But behind that is the ani, I, the essence. Then you know the idea is as follows. We know the difference between asiya, which is ma'asai, Hashem said, ma'asai yani nikra, the machshava, and even dibur. What does that mean? Asiya is something that is separate from the person. However, machshav is something which is one with the person. In other words, ma'aseh, when I did something, I wrote something on a piece of paper, I cooked breakfast, I made a cake, I built a chair, I did something, I could walk away. I don't have to be there anymore. So it's completely separate from the person. Machshav is something that we take with us everywhere we go. We're always thinking. We can't separate ourselves from our thought. So that's, we'll talk about Meluvasham Yuchid. And the Rebbe says, Afilu Dibur, even speech, which really is also a little bit like Maise. In other words, once I spoke the words, the word left me. They out of me, it's like a Maise. So Afilu Dibur, but even speech, even though it does leave the person, like Maise, just like if I do something, I could walk away. If I said something, I could walk away. Nonetheless, dibur is not exactly the same thing. And that is why speech is called a little bit of an action. We have all kinds of different sugyas in the Gemara that talk about that. Is dibur an action or not? For instance, there's a shaila, if a person, you're not allowed to, in Rabbi Metzia, the Gemara says you're not allowed to, you're not allowed to muzzle an animal working with food. And the Gemara has a question over there. What if you don't muzzle the animal, but you scream at the animal? Every time the animal wants to eat, you scream at it. You didn't do an action, it's just your voice. So it's machlokes Shlokish Rabbi Yochanan, if you work, if it's allowed, if it's not allowed, if you're over, if you're not over. But the opinion of the one that says it's also because it's ma'aseh, it's an action. The same thing over there, the Gemara says if there's kilaim, you're not allowed to have a kosher animal together with a non-kosher animal to plow a field. And it's kiloim. What if you attach them, but they're not working? That's okay, because you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to have an ox and a donkey at the same time. So if you're not working, it's okay. But what if they're attached together, and then with your voice, you get them going? So again, the same question: are you available or not? So there, the opinion is that ma'aseh, just the voice, is also considered to be an action. How you know? That means even in speech, you also have this idea of period, that's something which is disconnected from me.
Israel, can you make the screen larger? You know, there was a plus sign there. You can make it, a little more.
Good, more. Okay. I mean, you get to a certain age, you need the glasses.
Okay.
Telling you from experience. All right. Okay. So even dibur is something that is connected strongly with the person, but it's still it's ma'aseh. So it's like an action, like I said before. Just like ma'aseh, I could do something and I walk away. That thing will exist. When I speak, I could say something and I walk away, and it's still there. It's not part of me. But it's not exactly the same. It's only a ma'aseh zut, it's a small ma'aseh. So when we talk about what? When Hashem tells Moshe, depends on my action. So the action, the point that I was making, the action is something which is disconnected. So the mice is what? For instance, let's say you have a smith, a worker, and he did a keli, he built an object. The object does not need the craftsman behind it. It exists. Even though the person removed his hand, he finished his job. He put together, I don't know, a table, computer, a painting. That's it. He finished. Now, what keeps the keli going? Because the person did it. If the person never invested in that, then the craftsman never did it, and he would not have been there. So there is that investment from the person into that object. So the point is, it said that from the Magid was able to tell what kind of person made an object just by looking at the object. But because he has the investment of the person that makes the keli going. But it's separate from the workers who did the keli. It stays there. So you built something, somebody made, I don't know, a painting or made a becher or whatever it is, that stays over there. He invested of himself in there. That investment remains on the keli. However, speech, even if when it goes out of the person. The further he goes away from the person who spoke, he gets weaker and weaker and weaker. The voice, the sound. Until it disappears. Because when people speak, we can't say it goes on forever. We can only say that about Hashem, that Hashem speaks and his voice never stops. It keeps on going. So when we're trying to say Maaseh, we have something specific over here. So we spoke about Maaseh above. The Torah using a word that we can understand. We're trying to say, to express an idea that it's as if something is separate from us. From Hashem, rather, not us. That's the idea we express. Hashem said, Lefi Maaseh. Hashem didn't say, Lefi Diburai, according to what I say, according to what I do. And the reason the Torah uses the term doing, action, Maaseh, is because Maaseh is disconnected. As the name of Lefi Maaseh Anikra. That even in a Maaseh, which is disconnected, separated, the Ani, the I of Hashem, comes into, you'll find this over here. What happens? How do we connect the action, which is separated from the essence of Hashem? That happens through the name. That is the link that we could have an action, and in the action you see the essence of Hashem. That's the name of Hashem. That's what we use the name. Same way by person. What we said earlier, what is the name of a person? That's the connection between the Shama and the body. The Shama itself does not need a name. The name is only really once the Shama comes down into our body, and that's the name that connects it. Which is the reason why in the Chassidus we talk about the name of the Neshama, that's what gives the chayes to the person, and so on and so forth. Same idea over here. The name brings the chayes from the neshama into the person. That's the connection. Earlier we said last week, you could have a gilgul of the neshama, and one gilgul of the neshama, the example we gave, one gilgul of the neshama's name was Moshe, and the next gilgul of the neshama's name was Shimon, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Because the name is not for the neshama is Moshe, is Shimon, Amnei Saba, whatever is needed. When it comes to that person, it has a specific name. So the same thing over here by Hashem. There is the Ani, the Hashem, the essence. That does not need a name. It actually doesn't have a name. It's Ani, I. When it comes down to Maaseh, we need the name to make the connection. So that's what he says in the Maamar. When it comes to name Tzavois, the cave, since the way I'm called, according to my action, I'm called, which makes when I'm fighting with Rishoim. I'm called Tzavois. You can move in the Shem Tzavois to Shem Milcham. So obviously the name Tzavois is the name of war. And also in Sha'arayra, I forgot the name, since it was a Sefer of Kabbalah over there. I forgot the exact name. So from Italian, it's like an Italian name. So over there it says the Shem Tzvois of Benetzach V'Hoid. Name Tzvois is connected to Netzach V'Hoid. And all the wars in the world coming from there, from that name. What's the connection between Milchama and Netzach V'Hoid? Which is why all the Milchamas in the world are coming. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, Netzach, victory, is something that is connected to the essence of the person. To the extent, in other Maimorim the Rebbe says this also, people are going to give away everything just to be victorious. In order to win, they'll give away, they'll do crazy things just to win. I was talking to a lawyer this week about something, and he tells me, the rich people that could afford it, they'll go to court, they'll spend $10,000 to win $1,000, as long as they win. Somebody doesn't have the money, they say, what, is it worth for me to spend $2,000 in order to win $1,000? Forget it, I'm not going. If someone has the money, they're ready to spend $10,000 as long as they make $1,000, just to win. Because you want to win.
Something is for every person, or it's by a melech? Not every person.
Every person has midas and itzochen. So sometimes you can't afford it. So, you're putting it aside. But the greater the person, the greater the nitzochen. The greater nitzochen is nageya. The more you want to win. Person doesn't have much to win, doesn't care. So in the Maamar, like the first Maamar actually from those three, so the Rebbe says that, the greater the person, the greater the nitzochen is nageya. Like I said before, a person that has no money doesn't care to win in court. He's going to make the math. Does it worth it? Not worth it. Person that is greater, if so to speak, he's going to say, I'm going to win no matter what. I don't care if it's worth it or not worth it. And the greater the person, and the top is the melech, he'll do it as long as in order to have nitzochen. And really, by that person, by the melech, the nitzochen is very nageya. It's not just, that it's because he could do it. It's important. And certainly by Hashem, that nitzochen, that the whole entire world is conquered over, that is extremely nageya. So let's continue. To understand even more this idea of names. Once we understand names in general, we'll understand Tzvois in particular, which is Netzach that really touches the essence of the Neshama. So we do that. First, we need to introduce a Torah from the Baal Shem Tov, which concerns the 7 names of Hashem. The Torah of the Baal Shem Tov goes against a teaching that's mentioned by the Arizal. By the way, in the Maamar of Bosi Legani, the Rebbe always mentions something from all the Rebbeim. So we're going to see from the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, the Alter Rebbe, all the Rebbeim. In any event, so the Baal Shem Tov says something that goes against the Kisva Arizal. Hine. The Kisva Arizal muvesh achiluk shezayin shem serak b'kelim shel asfiris. The Arizal mentioned that the difference between the Zayin Shemes is only the kelim of the Sfiris. I know. Only the keli of the sphere is the difference. Shem keli is chesed, Shem lokim gvura, Shem tzvois b'netzach v'hoid. There's a b'shara shemesh and m'chokim, the same way with all the other names. Aval pnimis, haspheris, but the real inside of the spheres. I know, what is the light of the spheres? What is the chayu, the energy of the spheres? To Shem Havai. Shukol spheres b'shom, and that's the same by all the spheres. So that's one thing. Example of that is, one example found in the volume of Kabbalah is that if you take glasses, like cups, a glass, and you put water in it. So if you put the glass is like red glass, the water is going to look red. Put it to green glass, going to look green. Green, put in the glass that is round, the water will be round. If you put in a glass that's more like a martini glass, more on an angle, it will be on an angle. So it's really the, how do you call it? It's inside is the same thing. What changes is the keli. So that's what comes out from the Kisva Arizal. So that's what it says. Oh no, Baal Shem Tov Meir. I explains the Baal Shem Tov. Shekei, Anshe Kavon Zayin Shemeshanem Chokim. Shemaskim Tefillah. Why do we have those 5 names? What does that mean? Leila Sfiris, Elov Yisborach. When we dive into Hashem, we dive into Hashem. We're not diving to Chesed, to Gvura. We're diving to Hashem. Indian is Elov, right? B'chol Kareinu Elov. Whenever we call out to Him, who is Him? Elov Elohim Mideisav. Maamar Razal, it was said before, right here on the pasuk B'chol Kareinu Elov. Elov Elohim Mideisav. Say Chazal. We're turning to Him, not to His midas. So when there are different names in davening, Kel, Elokim, Tzavois, Tluyim, Umishtam of Islapshus Eris Basfiris. It depends on the Eir in the Sfira. Hainu. Islapshus Eir Basfiris HaChesed. The Eir comes into the Sfira of Chesed. Eir Basfiris HaGvura. Eir Basfiris Natzav Vahid. Gvura Baruch HaBalak Tere B'Sofel Beikra. And that's different. In other words, we don't have Shem Havai in all the Sfiras. There's an Eir that comes into Sfira, becomes now the Eir of Chesed, Eir of Gvura. L'cheira, has a bistira lavur b'kisva Arizal. L'cheira, that contradicts what the Arizal says. Sha'eir ha'melubesh b'asfiris u'b'kolim b'shaveh. That the light in the Sfiras is all the same. It's all Shem Havai. V'ein b'chiluk in Zayin HaShemes, and you don't have a difference in 7 Shemes. Now, says the Rebbe, from the fact that we're davening to Hashem, and yet we're using those words, it seems to be that each word is a reference to a particular aspect of things. And then, but that's the midas. And when it says Elov Elohim Midaisov, that means Him, because the midas are not Him. Where the Kisva Arizal seem to imply that the midas are really Him, Shem Havai. Because in Shem Havai is found in Chesed, Shem Havai is in Gvura, Shem Havai is in Tiferes, in Netzach and Hoyt. So is Shem Havai in the Spheres, or the Spheres are the Spheres, and then there's a higher, something deeper than that. So the Baal Shem Tov says that Elov means higher than the Spheres. When it says Elov Elohim Mideisav are the Spheres. Elov means higher. And you know that is as follows. Pasha Shmois, that's Master explain. The Baal Shem Tov means something different over here. The Baal Shem Tov talks about the chayis of the spheres. He doesn't mean the revelation of Hashem in the spheres. He means the revelation that keeps the sphere alive, the keli. Continue a little more, we'll explain. We know. Besides the light that goes into the keli, which is chayor, the chayis of the thing, the keli itself has its light, has its life. So that's what it says. When you leave from them, it stays like a goof without neshama. But the body still exists. Relation is battling the government. Now, that doesn't mean once the neshama leaves, or once the earth leaves, the body disappears, or the keli disappears. It's not like that. The keli has its own mitzvahs. Because the keli itself is its own chayis, besides the oil that goes inside. So it means the following. There's a keli in the oil. We're going to use two mashalim. That's a guf and the shama. When the Eibishter created Adam, he first created the guf, the body, and in the body, he blew in the neshama. But the body existed before there was a neshama. And the body exists after there's a neshama. When the neshama leaves, as we mentioned before, the guf doesn't disappear. The guf still exists because it has its own existence. That's one example. I'll give you another example, which is thoughts and words. We think in words. The way we think is using words. But the words are independent from the thought. My ability to speak, my ability to think, to use words is not connected to what I'm thinking right now. It's two separate things. Now, right now, if I have a thought, I want to express it, I'm going to go back to my toolbox, And in my toolbox, I'm going to find words, and I'm going to use those words to express a thought that I have. But the words exist on their own. They have their own existence. They exist on the toolbox of the vocabulary that I have all those words inside of me. And at the right time, I combine them for the thing. Or if you want to use a third example, if you want to cook and boil water to make tea, you have a pot. The pot doesn't have to have water in it. The pot exists. You go into the cabinet, pull out a pot or the kettle. It's there. When you fill it up with water, it's useful. But it doesn't not exist. It doesn't disappear if it doesn't have water in it. It exists on its own. So the keli exists on its own. Obviously, if the keli exists on its own, because Hashem keeps it alive. And if you go back to the mashal of Adam, the body was there before there was a neshama. And the neshama only came inside of it, which means for the purpose of the body. So really, the keli has a deeper existence than the chayis that comes inside of the keli. So that's what we explain. That's what the Masirik says in what the Baal Shem Tov is explaining. The Baal Shem Tov says that the midas, we talk about the midas or the shemis, are the spheres, and that's the chayis, the oil that comes in there. But Elav is higher than that. The Baal Shem Tov is referring to the chayis of the kelim itself, the chayis of chesed, the chayis of gvur, and so on. So we understand there's no contradiction. What the Kisva Arizal writes is correct. In all the kelim yev shem havaya. That's true. At the same time, Baal Shem Tov is also right. The fact that there are differences between one sphere and the other, it's not just because the keli. The chai is the life that gives strength to the sphere is different. The chayes of chesed is kel. Chayes of kli agvura nikra b'shem elokim. Chayes of gvura is elokim. And there's of Shem's voice. Same thing with voice. Kashem askin betfilah Hashem adna. Shem's voice. Shem elokim. Shem kel. And akavana kli asfiras. And when we talk about those names, we don't mean the kel of the sphere. The one who keeps those kelim alive. So that's what I mean. We're davening to him, not to the kelim, to the midas. We're talking about the light and the life, which is in the spheres. Not the kelim of the sphere on their own, but the chayes that keeps those kelim alive. Now, based on that, then the different names it means the chayes that gives life to the keli itself of the sphere. And we understand. This is something deeper and greater than the oil that comes into the keli. Because the oil that comes into the keli only comes later. But the keli itself has its own importance and came first. And that's when we talk about Elov, like the Pardes says, that we're talking about the light that comes into the keli. Here we're talking about much deeper madrega. The keli, which is a light of a chaysh, since we're talking about the chayz of the keli of the sfira, the keli, and as a nimshach mokim nalo says, that comes from a very deep place. That is the hiu, the Hashem, that is unified with the keli. And actually, that's even a greater revelation, a greater chayis, a greater oil, than the oil that comes together with, that's mislabish in the oil of the keli. Hiu chayu chad. Shlachen, and that is why, why are we saying that this light is stronger? Because in order to be unified with the keli, it takes much more effort than to be unified with light. In other words, that such a light, such revelation of Hashem could remain in spiritual, that's almost evident. That revelation of Hashem could come into a keli, and come not into a keli, but take form, the shape of a keli, that's a greater accomplishment. That's harder. So if we talk about such a light, such a revelation of Hashem is able to become one with the keli, this is a much stronger light than the one is able to become one with Ruchnis, with the Oir. So here we're talking about, essentially, we're talking about the deeper light, the light that is the essence of the Kila, that keeps the Kila alive. So, with that, we could go into another idea, which is a thought of the Magid. So far, we have from the Baal Shem Tov, we mentioned Kisva Arizal, the Ramak, the Baal Shem Tov, which the Ramak, the part that says, so we talk about the oil in the spheres. Kisva Arizal seems to be saying the same thing, and the Baal Shem Tov said that's deeper than that. And so Kisva Arizal mentioned that Shem Havayim is Sphira, and then we had the Baal Shem Tov that says we talk about the light that is in the Kalim, and we explained them both right. Because really the light in the Kalim is a deeper place. Now we could go to a Magid. The Magid says the following. There's a Chazal, Maamar Chazal, that says Hashem's name is not spelled, not said the way it's written. What does that mean? Nichsav Hani Bavaye. Nikra Ani Badnus. We call it, it's written rather, Havaye, Yud Kevavke. And I call it, we express it with Adnus. Aleph Dalet Nun Yud. Why are we choosing that name Adnes? We know that Adne is Malchus. What does that mean? Why is Adne the master of Malchus? To be an Odin, you need to have people are lower, servants. Or if you want to be the king, you have to have a nation. So what is the Eibush to have that title is the master? Because he has servants. We are his people, we're his people, and we're servants. Since we call him our master, therefore we could use that name. That name is justified. He's our master. So that's the way we call it. So that's okay to say. To say Adnei, that's all right. We're allowed to use that name because it's a true name, it's a true reality. Hashem is our master. We're his servants. However, Shemavai is the essence of all essence before any creation. Therefore, we can't call it out, we can't say the way it's written. But let's explain that. What does that mean? Because it's the source of all existence, we can't say it. Shemavai, we know it's Shem HaFarish. Shem HaFarish means the name that the Kohen Gadol would say on Yom Kippur. That was Shem Havai. It was not another name. Spoke about the name of 72 letters. That was Shem Havai. That's what the Kohen Gadol would say. Umali Yeser, higher, the deeper definition of Shem Havai. It's not just the Shem HaMeferosh. It's Shem HaEtzem. The essence. It's the name of the essence. Sha'etzem u'lamalu kol yinesavus. The essence is higher than all creation. Lachein, and a nikra kiksivose. And that is why we can't call out that name. We can't say it, which means I would say to call out means we're mamshech. We can't be mamshech that the way it's written. Havayi. But what does kriya means? We're revealing it in a way that it could come to somebody else. The world is not ready yet, is not able to have a revelation of a name of the essence of Hashem higher than all creations. But and yet at the same time remain who we are. If we would had that awareness, the curtain is parted and we see Hashem, then we cannot remain the way we are. Something has to change. And it's a simple thing, at a very simple level. At a very simple level, Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai, for instance, told his students before he passed away, they asked him for a bracha. He said, I wish you, I give you a bracha, should be as afraid of people, as afraid of Hashem as we are of people. And told him that's it, that's the degree of Yiddish mind that we have to have. And he says that's pretty good. Because people always say, oh, I hope no one is watching me. Because, we behave differently when people are watched. So, if you can have such a behavior that we're aware of Hashem constantly the whole time, we're already on a different level. We behave differently. That's not a Soli Shem Havaya Shem Etzem. Just we behave differently. We're not us. We're under the influence of that revelation. If there would be a revelation, everything would be the essence, we would stop existing. We would disappear in our existence. We would not want to be there. Kal v'chemer, for instance, from Nadav and Avihu, when they entered the Kodesh HaKadoshim, by the time, the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they brought all the Korbanos, and they entered the Kodesh HaKadoshim, they left the world. So such a degree of connection to Hashem, they didn't want to be in this world. So that, again, that's necessarily without this revelation. So that revelation, which is higher and transcends any kind of revelation, the world cannot handle it. So that we could refer to as Adne. Hainu. How do we bring out this essence of Hashem in a way that we could relate to it, which is creation, is Hashem Adne, and that's the idea of Adne. Which is the idea of kingship, master, cave, and since the Eibishter wanted to be the king and to be the master, and therefore the Eibishter created the world with the mitzvahs of people, slaves, or servants. Same thing with all the other names. So there are different aspects of creation, but it's all part of creation. That's how the Eibishter created the world. That's all the names, but all the names basically, besides Shem Havaya, are all actions that involve the world. Shem Etzem is not something that could be revealed in the world or to the world. So the Magid continues, why are we calling out with the name of Adne? Because we only understand a very small part into the world with the Tzimtzum. Why? Because that's the Eibishter. What do we understand? We understand because the Eibishter wants to be our master and we are his servants. So we understand things that relate in that kind of relationship. Shem Havaya, we have no clue whatsoever. And we can't. Because as we said before, Shem Havaya is before any creation. We can't think without beyond time and space, for instance, which is a creation. We can't imagine a world when there's no such thing as space and time. So we have no idea what Shem Havaya is. And the truth is, all the Elam Esalim don't have an understanding what Shem Havaya is. Because they all are creation. So they all operate under certain premises. For instance, time and space. Time and space, they may be different in Atzilus than it is by us, but it is something. Atzilus knows a beginning and maybe not an end, but there's a beginning before they Eibishter put in place Atzilus and after. So, and there's Madrigas. Atzilus is higher than Bria. That's space. So even Atzilus cannot wrap its head around, if so to speak, this idea of Shem Havaya. So that's what it says in Pirkos. Neged Shmo Avet Shmo. What does that mean? Neged Shmo, against Shmo, Sheros Elias Nagid Ve'oden, someone who wants to be a Nagid, wants to be a master, Avet Shmo Yisachlolim Shemetzim, then you have to lose out the name. What does that mean? If you want to have a revelation of Shem Havaya, you need to, Shem Ha'oden, that Hashem is the master of the world, you have to hide Shem Havaya. The idea is like this. What's the keli in relation to the oir? Which is really what the 7 names are. They're the keli to the oir. That's from the thickening of the lights, meaning the light are less refined. Now we have something that could contain the light. Which is what the Tzimtzum brings in relation to the oiris. Tzimtzum is there to contain. What the example of words before to an idea. If you don't have words, it's very hard to communicate an idea, and even to ourselves. So the Tzimtzum puts it together. And emotion is like that also, right? If you have an emotion, you try to put words, so you're able to contain that emotion. Now it's helpful to contain that emotion. You could get over it, you could help, you could share. So we need that Tzimtzum in order to be able to channel those itis. And all those Tzimtzumim are able to happen because of the Tzimtzum Rishon. Tzimtzum Rishon was the way the Eibishter completely removed his revelation, hid his revelation. Ovad means lost, gone. That means it's completely removed. Because there was such a thing as a first tzimtzum, it became possible for any aspect in the world throughout later to have a tzimtzum that the kelim will provide to the oir. That is why we call only Shem Adner, where Shem Havai, Shem Etzem. In other words, we cannot touch Etzem, because Etzem is higher than revelation, higher than words, higher than tzimtzum. Therefore, we don't have a way to touch it. We don't have a way to communicate, to contact it. So the only thing that we have is Adner, which is the fact that the Eibusher created the world, and he is the master. In other words, tzimtzum. So only through tzimtzum are we able to have a connection to the Eibusher at this point. And he continues to explain, even though Shem Havai normally is completely out of reach, there is a way. What is the way? When we disconnect ourselves, remove ourselves completely from the Gashmi, and we allow the spiritual to take over, then we could get to Shem Havai. The example of that is Kohen Gadol. It says about the Kohen Gadol to separate to be Kodesh Kodashim, Holy of Holies, which is a spiritual concept. That means it's completely, Kodesh means separated. Kodesh Kodashim means it's separated from that separation itself. Not only is it separate from Gashmis, it's even one step removed, separated from that separation itself. So it's completely in a complete spiritual level. And when does that happen that Kohen is on that level? Yom Kippurim. She'oz hu Shabbos Shabbosim. Yom Kippur is also completely disconnected. It's Shabbos in relation to Shabbos. So already Shabbos is a completely different day than the rest of the week. And this is Shabbos in relation to Shabbos itself. Shabbos has an impact of the week. Yom Kippurim is a Kedusha which is even higher than that. Completely disconnected from the world. You're not even eating, drinking, you're in a different place. When the Kohen Gadol enters that day of Yom Kippur, is a whole different level. And then he's able to touch Shem Havai, Shem Etzem. And therefore, that is why Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol was able to pronounce the Shem Havai, which is Shem Havai, which actually is the Gam Kos in the Beis Hamikdash. That's also connected to the Beis Hamikdash. Because in the Beis Hamikdash we're able to have that relation of Shem Havai, the way it's written. So that's what happened over there. Now, do a little more till the end of the Ois. And the movement says the Rebbe, something doesn't add up over here. We're saying that because Hashem, the Kohen Gadol, is completely disconnected from Gashmis, and he lives in a spiritual life, that's where you could have a relation of Shem Havai. Why is Shem Havai? Shem Havai is higher than creation. Okay. But the spirituality of the Kohen Gadol is also creation. So the Kohen Gadol is disconnected from the world. He lives in a spiritual life. He completely but his spirituality is a creation. He's not reaching a level of chayda that is before even the tzimtzum. So, okay, he's not Gashmi. He's Ruchni. Okay, instead of being in the basement, he's on the ground floor, or the first floor or the second floor. But he's still part of the creation, part of the building. So what are we saying? That the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, he reaches the level of Shem Havai. Shem Havai is before any creation, before anything, before higher than Atzilus, higher than Ak. How does it work? It's just like the Eibusher created Gashmis, he created the Ruchnis. So because the Kohen Gadol is not involved in Gashmis, he's not eating and drinking, and he's completely living a spiritual experience, now you could have Shem Havai. How does it work? So here's the explanation, says the Rebbe. Based on what we said earlier, that the light of the spheres, which means the light of the kelim itself, the light that is involved to create the kelim, come from something deeper than the Islamish became that the revelation in the kelim. And why was that? How did we explain it? Since we have to have that light in a lower place, the keli, therefore it has to come from a higher source. There's been the That's the same answer by what the Kohen Gadol was able to say Shem Havai Yom Kippur. That comes from a very, very high place. That was higher than the whole creation. And that, how do we see that? That down here on earth, you could have a human being that is disconnected. While he's here on earth, is disconnected from Gashmis. That's like, wow, you're putting two opposites together in this world. Now, how do you have two opposites together? It's a ninanim noise. That comes from the essence of Hashem, where the impossible is impossible. There's nothing that is impossible. In other words, in Atzilus, you have Ruchnis, you don't have Gashmis. It's not possible. You can't have both. Bria, Yetzirah, in Asiya, it's a physical world. But it comes as such a powerful revelation that you could have in Asiya, the revelation which is even higher than Atzilus. How is that? And we're going to see soon, the Rebbe is going to tell us how we're connecting all these two opposites in this world, and therefore it has to come from a very powerful place. I know. Shemitzad Gisan, Mechat Gisan on one hand, Kohen Gadol had to be a human being, with everything that it implies, everything that it works for a human being. Probably he was hungry, on Yom Kippur maybe, I don't know, and maybe other things. He was cold. We're choshesh that the Kohen Gadol cannot be part of the Beis Din is going to decide if there's one other or two other. Why? Because we're concerned that he wants to be Yom Kippur as early as possible, closer to the summer, not closer to the winter. Because he's going to have to go to the mikveh, he doesn't want to be cold. So he's a person, and he's going to get cold, and he wants to get hot or hungry, whatever it is. He's a human being. And he has to be connected to the world. And that's what the Pasuk says, he has to bring kaporev to him and to his family, to his house. He has to be married. Not only has to be married, in case his wife dies and he's not going to be married Yom Kippur, we prepare him a second wife. So really has to be married. It's important that he's connected and grounded in the world. But at the same time, at the same time, this person that was very much a human being, at the same time was able to leave Gashmis and be involved in spiritual life. These two opposites. How can a human being do that? There's the same thing in terms of the time and the space. In Azman, Yom Kippur is the whole year. There's no eating, there's no drinking, because it's a whole day completely different than the rest of the year. On the other end, there's a Mispasha Yom Hashanah. It's part of the calendar. It's part of the 365 days of the year. So we see those two opposites. On one end, it's a Gashmis Dikadei, on the other end, it's a Ruchas Dikadei. And being Amokim, when it comes to the place, Amokim on the Beis HaMikdash, it says by the Beis HaMikdash, this is the gate to the heavens. This is why you had the miracle of the Aron, which did not take space. Even though the Aron had to have a special measurement, which is 2.5 long, 1.5 wide, not 1.5 tall. And yet, if you would measure it in the Beis HaMikdash itself, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, you wouldn't find it. Meaning, the whole Kodesh HaKadoshim was 20 amas. So, from one wall to wall, it was 20 amas. If you would measure from one wall to one end of the Aron, and then from the other end of the Aron to the next wall, you would have 20 minus the width of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Aron. And yet, there was a miracle that from one end to the other end, with skipping the Aron, you will still find the 20. So you have midah and no midah. This ability of connecting two opposites come from the deepest place possible. That is why you were able to have the revelation of Shem Havai. So it's not just because the Kohen Gadol was a spiritual being on Yom Kippur. That's not good enough, because it was both at the same time. Gashmi and Ruchni. That comes from a much higher place. And there you could touch Shem Havai, Shem Afuri, Shem Etzem. That you could reveal Hashem the way He is written, and you could say it, you could call a lot and reach that. Okay, stop over here.
Yeshar Koach Yisrael.
Welcome. Good night.
Good night.